A very good evening to all the participants who are here today. I, Aditi Khare, student of MSc. It is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome our guest speaker, Professor Dr. Srinivas Melkote, our HOD, Professor Dr. Jagdish Jadhav, all the faculty members from CMS department and from the other universities, research scholars and the students who are present here to attend this virtual book discussion on the Handbook of Communication and Development, which is edited by Professor Dr. Srinivas Melkote, Emeritus Professor, School of Media and Communication, Bowling Green State University, and Professor Dr. Arvind Singhal, Samuel Shirley, and Edna Holt Marston Endowed, Professor of Communication and the Director of Social Justice Initiative at the University of Texas. Moving on, I invite our respected head of the department, Professor Dr. Jagdish Jadhav, for the inaugural speech. Sir, please.
Yeah, thank you, Aditi. I have a great privilege to be a part of the today's August gathering. The most respected Professor Srinivas Melkote, sir, along with Professor Arvind Singhal ji. Today, I am not participating as a head or as dean of School of Social Sciences, but today I am going to be a part of this August gathering as one of a student of media subject, and today I am going to enlighten myself. So, on behalf of all Central University of Rajasthan School of Social Sciences and particularly Cultural Media Studies, I am here to welcome you, sir. Thank you for accepting this invitation, allowing us to be discuss and deliberate about your very thought-provoking, very incisive edition. That's a handbook on communication and development. I have gone through the couple of review of this book, and it has got a lot of appreciation from the different corner. And many people are saying that this is going to be, a very value addition not only for the media student, but the people those who are working in the field of social advocacy, people those who are part of the media stream in a different capacity. So it is going to be help them a lot. So thank you for this very wonderful contribution. Uh, as Dr. Anup is going to talk about the book, so that is not my role today. But I'm here to congratulate Dr. Anup, Dr. Pranta, and Dr. Nicholas sir, and entire community of cultural media studies for taking these initiatives. And this book discussion series probably will help a department not just to enhance our different knowledge windows, but that will certainly will get connected with different distinguished professors, new plethora of knowledge, and this is very wonderful initiative, students you have taken. So congratulations from university and from school side. Uh, so at the outset, I am here basically to listen from the professors. I wish to be a part of, as the knowledge gathering. So let me be brief today. So I once again welcome Professor Srinivas sir, Professor Arvind Singhal sir, all people those who have joined from the different part of the countries and from the India. And still, I am saying that many people, after every few seconds, people are joining. So I know that they are not joining, as this program is being anchored by my university, but the people are joining to listen Professor Srinivas and his associate. So by welcoming you once again, sir, I am requesting Aditi to carry forward this program. Over to you, Aditi.
Thank you, sir, for your words. So, before the session begins, it is important to have a little introduction about the book on which we will be discussing today. So, now I invite Assistant Professor Dr. Anup Kumar to provide a glimpse of the book to all the participants present here.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Jagdish Jadhav, sir. And thank you, Professor Srinivas Melkote, sir. So I will read about the book from the website of the publisher. Okay, so this book, that is the Handbook of Communication and Development, it critically examines the role and place of media and communication in development and social change, reflecting a vision for change anchored in Values of social justice. Expert contributors discuss and evaluate the roles and outcomes of media and communication for social mobilization, media mobilization, community mobilization, advocacy, participation, empowerment, capacity building, resistance, networking, and action for progressive social change. Chapters explore communicative actions involved in social, economic, political, and cultural integration and transformation of individuals, communities, places, and societies in the process of development and social change. Outlining the genealogy and the history of the field, the handbook investigates the possible new directions and objectives in the area. Key conclusions include an enhanced role for development communication in participatory development, active agency of stakeholders of development programs, and the operationalization of social justice in development. Comprehensive yet accessible, this book will be a key resource for students and scholars of media and communication, political science, development studies, social work, critical education, community organization, and anthropology. This will be also of value to professionals working in associations and organizations dealing with development and social change. Thank you very much. Over to you, Aditi.
Thank you very much, sir. So, as the introduction of this book was necessary, so is the introduction of our guest speakers. Now, I would like to invite Assistant Professor Dr. Pranta Pratik Patnaik to tell us about the guest speakers.
Thank you, Aditi. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to introduce the Dr. Srinivas sir. I am from the background of sociology, but I have done my work in media, and in sociology we also have one MM Srinivas. And when I worked on media and development, and I read your book Communication for Development, Theory and Practice, which you had co-authored with Dr. Leslie Stives. And it's a great privilege today for me to introduce you who Dr. Srinivas Raj Melkote does not need any introduction, but still I would like to read about him, where he is currently working as a professor emeritus at the School of Media and Communication, College of Arts and Science, Bowling Green State University, US. He has been a teacher in the field of media production, journalism, and mass communication for more than 3 decades. He has taught at universities in India, US, and Jamaica. He has earned his PhD degree from University of Iowa. Professor Melkote has researched and published extensively on a range of issues ranging from the role of communication in directed social change, participatory communication, international communication, health communication, media effects, and communication pedagogy. Professor Melkote's current interests are examining the role of media and communication in achieving social justice. Dr. Melkote is also active in examining the role of media in acculturation, body dissatisfaction, and health related issues. We welcome you, sir, for this book discussion series by the department. Secondly, I would also like to introduce Dr. Arvind Singhal, sir. Dr. Arvind Singhal is the Samuel Sirley and Edna Holt Marston Endowed Professor of Communication and Director of the Social Justice Initiative at the University of Texas at El Paso. He is also appointed since 2010 as the William J. Clinton Distinguished Fellow at the Clinton School of Public Service, Little Rock. And since 2015, he is also serving as a Distinguished Professor and the Faculty of Business Administration, Inland University of Applied Sciences, Norway. He has earned his PhD from Annenberg School of Communication, University of Southern California, Los Angeles. Professor Singhal teaches and conducts research on the diffusion of innovation, organizing for social change, entertainment education strategy, and his outreach spans public health, education, human rights, poverty alleviation, sustainable development, democracy and governance, and corporate citizenship. So we welcome Dr. Arvind Singhal also for this book discussion series, and we are very much privileged that both the authors are here with us, and we have a august gathering to listen to both the speakers. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So it feels great to have a chance to listen live to the professors or the authors whose books we are, reading in our coursework, as Pranta sir said. So it feels really great to have you, sir, with us. And now I would like to invite you to enlighten us with the book and whatever you want to share. And after this, we'll have a
Okay.
question answer
Um,
session. Yes.
With your permission, I would like to interrupt here. Professor Arvind Singhal sir has communicated that he is not able to join the meeting, but he has shared his video message for our participants.
Greetings from El Paso, Texas. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. I am Arvind Singhal. I'm based here at the University of Texas at El Paso. I know today you are getting together at the Central University of Rajasthan, the Department of Culture and Media Studies, to discuss this book, Handbook of Communication and Development, which I co-edited with my guru, Professor Srinivas Melkote. I thought I'd put some memories on the screen. Any handbook is a collaboration that often spans many years. I first met Dr. Melkote in 1984. I was a student at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. He was hired there at that time, and he was gracious enough to take me on as his first master's advisee. He directed my master's thesis. And our association has continued, although strangely, we never wrote anything together. So this is a culmination, this handbook is a culmination of, you can say, our long association. And as Professor Melkote retired last year in 2020, this handbook in some ways came into fruition. So I'm sorry I cannot be there in person, but I hope you enjoy these pictures that were taken more than 3 decades apart.
Thank you, sir. Now over to you, sir.
Okay, all right. Good evening to all of you. If you're not able to hear me, please just let me know. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. It's always a pleasure to talk to people about communication and development. And I'm pleasantly surprised that this book, which is hardly a month old, is already getting this kind of exposure. And I was pleasantly surprised to receive a email invitation from Dr. Anup Kumar, inviting me to talk about the book. And I did call up Arvind Singhal and told him, and so it's very nice. It's very nice that you could organize this this book discussion, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Dr. Arvind Singhal, for all the kind words that you have said, and I hope that you can join me in at another time. So I will spend about maybe 15-20 minutes, to give you a very quick picture of this book, and then we can have some time for discussion. The genesis of the field of development communication began, as some of you who are familiar with this subject, it began with the theories and models in economics, sociology, psychology, and political science that came mostly from West European and North American countries, which prescribed a certain model, a certain trajectory, as I would like to call it, of development and social change for the so-called third world nations. And also, concomitantly, the organized development assistance programs by multilateral and bilateral agencies of the United Nations and the rich countries in response to the crisis following World War II and decolonization of countries in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. So that is where it all started more than 70 years ago. I'm very happy, I'm very privileged and thankful that I have been involved in this field for at least since my master's, which goes back to Bangalore University in 1975. That's when I did my master's in Bangalore University, and that's when my Professor Epen, planted the idea of communication and development, something that was foreign to me as a young man. And that was also the time when the novel SITE experiment, SITE, which is Satellite Instructional Television Experiment, was launched by India, by Mrs. Gandhi was the prime minister at that time, to bring communication to 2,400 villages in the states of Rajasthan, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, and I'm missing one state now. So right from that time, I have been in this field. I have had the privilege of meeting some very big luminaries like Professor Everett Rogers. I was thrilled beyond words when I was at the University of Iowa, and the guest speaker was none other than Professor Wilbur Schramm, the giant about, whose books we read as students at that time. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people, and most importantly, observing the way the scholarship in this field has developed, and also being a part of that. So development communication, or DevCom, to put it in briefly, has evolved according to the theories and models during each historical period since the mid-20th century. So we have the 1950s, then 60s, 70s, 80s. Okay, so I want to go quickly and kind of draw your attention to this before I start talking about this book. So it has evolved according to each historical period since the 1945, and it started with, as I told you, most of the colonial liberated countries, including India, adopted development as a strategic goal of the government. And in this journey, in the last 70, 80 years, this field of development communication has adopted an interdisciplinary approach. Dr. Pranta Patnaik just told us he's a sociologist. Okay, so the interdisciplinary approach, because as you all know, communication and media by themselves, I don't know, this is a very controversial subject, by themselves not, don't have a place, but all the other social sciences, whether it be sociology or economics or political science or anthropology, do have a place and a role for communication. And so naturally, it takes on a very multidisciplinary approach for development and social change. And this has transformed, enriched, research and practice in communication and development for social change. The models, the paradigms, the methods have evolved in the last 70 plus years. So if you have read my book and listened to me on other occasions, it all started in the earliest decades of the 1950s, 60s, 70s with the modernization model of development. And this was the prominent model after Second World War. All the way, even today, it's quite popular, but it was a dominant model in the post World War II years. And basically, to put it in a nutshell, it emphasized Western style modernization as the preferred development path for all countries, including India, to adopt. And it was influenced by the quantitative and the empirical social sciences, theory and methodology. In particular, it had a strong emphasis in economics. Important indicators of development were like GNP, gross national product, per capita incomes. We must increase the per capita incomes. We must increase the GNP. You understand what I'm talking about. And all mostly economic indices in development. And what was the role of development communication in this modernization model of development? The role of development communication was preparing individuals and communities in developing countries towards modernization by trying to change their attitudes, their opinions, and their cultural practices to be more in line with those in Western countries. That's how it was when I was a bachelor student at Usmania University, or when I was a master student at Bengaluru University. That was how things were at that time. Mass media at that time, such as radio, were used a lot in top-down models of communication to diffuse modernizing and westernized innovations to people in developing countries. So many development communication models and programs were influenced by modernization ideas and tenets, diffusion of innovations research, social marketing approaches, entertainment education pedagogy, biomedical approaches in health, using a behavior change communication model. And this behavior change communication model to change people's attitudes, opinions, behavior, as I told you earlier, was influenced by Western functionalistic sociology. And it was anchored in positivist philosophy and methodology. Now, what is positivist philosophy and methodology? It is characterized by technical and instrumental processes to achieve development and generate measurable outcomes. The rules and methods of the quantitative empirical social sciences are applied, and the outcomes of development, as I told you a few minutes ago, are mostly quantitative, such as indicators of the economy, in the case of economics, or in the case of health, to give you some examples, it deals with statistics such as rates of infant mortality, or life expectancy, or maternal death during childbirth, and so on. So you get the idea that these were what was basically the role of development and the role of development communication within that. Now, much of this began to change around, if I were to select a date, I would select the decade of the 1970s. That was exactly the time I was entering the field. And the concept of development expanded now to include more types of social change, which were guided by other paradigms, theories, disciplinary influences, as well as geographical considerations. Now, what were some of the changes? Again, very briefly, development now was viewed as a widely participatory process of social change and included a society's social and cultural aspects besides the economic. I feel and I think that this was the first major multidisciplinary encounter in development communication, bringing other disciplines into this field. And but basically, what's important is it brought together the positivist model and the interpretive model. And these two, the positivist and interpretive, are the anchors of modernization paradigm and the participatory paradigm. Okay. So going over to the participatory paradigm, this paradigm is influenced by social change communication and is based on interpretive epistemology and methodology. So what does this mean? We're moving away from economics here. And so here the emphasis is on understanding of people, groups, and other phenomena within their specific contexts and involves thick description, empathy, self-reflection in practical situations. The rules and conventions of the interpretive method are considered more important. And outcomes of change, social change, include many non-quantitative goals such as independence, cultural and personal growth, partnership, participation, and empowerment. So these are all the new ideas that are brought into this field when we started in the 1970s, when we started seeing the influence of these of the participatory paradigm. Now, this obviously posed a challenge to the identity and role of development communication theory and practice. Many observers contend that it changed the way communication was conceptualized and used in development and social change work. Behavior change communication models of the earlier period were now complemented with the newer communication for social change model. Okay, so in these newer models, a participatory communication approach between the sender and receiver of communication was initiated, and the bias was towards horizontal participation, subject to subject. In the earlier modernization model, it was mostly an expert telling people what to do. It was top down. It was subject to object. But now it was people talking to each other at the same level. So horizontal communication models. So the bias was towards that, as well as critical awareness of the existential situations. Okay, because India is not United States, India is not UK, So you have to keep in mind the context in each country, within the country, if it's a big country like India, each region. And so critical awareness of what is happening at the ground level, and dialogic communication. Like today, when we start talking about it, we are talking to each other. It's a dialogic communication. So now, I'm not trying to say that behavior change communication model has been eliminated. I would never say that. It's very much there and it's very useful. But each of these has a place. Okay, for example, certain activities like media information campaigns, health communication campaigns are better served by behavior change communication models. Okay, for example, COVID-19. What are the things that one should do to keep in mind to keep yourself safe? An expert would probably tell the rest of us, you should do this, you should do that, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, but the social change programs that involve participation, collaboration, capacity building, and empowerment, those are better informed by communication for social change model. Okay, so that is very briefly, I'm introducing the participatory paradigm that has been with us since around the 1970s. And however, the definition of participation reflected a wide variety of approaches for participation. In many contexts, the level of participation required was low. And so in other words, participation meant different things to different people and programs. That's the point I'm trying to make. And as a social critic, I would like to say that the participation initiatives in institutional and government and other such development programs are slanted towards maintaining the status quo in society, not disturbing the power situation in societies, and they are seldom counter-hegemonic. I know this is a very big term used by political economists. Counter-hegemonic is that in these participatory models, they don't attempt to change the social structure and the power structure, but actually try to fit participation within the existing power structure. So now we move on, and we are moving forward from 1970s into 1980s. And again, scholars have documented that there were more changes taking place in DevCom theory and research. The concept and practice of empowerment, a word that we use a lot these days, expanded upon the earlier objective of participation in the models and practices. I would say by middle 1980s towards the end of 1980s. This was, I feel, a second major interdisciplinary thrust in DevCom research and practice. The construct of empowerment identifies the underlying constraints in social change, such as, for example, the lack of power among the people at the receiving end of development programs. So critical research goes beyond the instrumental interest of achieving and improving development outcomes, as we saw in the positivistic modernization model, or the self-understanding and interpretive dimensions, as we saw in the participatory model, to also critique the social, economic, and structural impediments and challenges that prevent people from emancipation due to discriminative and coercive societal structures and influences. So now, disciplines such as community organization, critical education, women and gender studies, community psychology, and many others like these offered new concepts and practices that could be incorporated into development communication theory and practice. Okay. Now, the difference between modernization and participatory approaches and empowerment approaches, the differences are very stark when you look at their implications for development communication. Modernization uses the transmission model of communication, which involves sending a message from a source to a receiver with in a linear and top-down fashion, and the messages are mostly prescriptive, telling people to do this and do that. Okay, the transmission approach is insufficient to the task of development and social change. It's important, but not sufficient. Participation and empowerment objectives require building understanding, empathy, partnership, and capacity building with the people who happen to be the beneficiaries of development programs. The emphasis now of development communication work has expanded under the empowerment approach to value communication not only for its transmission value, but for its organizing value. Okay? Because communication in the earlier days was used to how to move messages from point A to point B, very important. But now communication was being used also to organize people, bring people together, bring communities together, build solidarity, build partnerships, and so on. Very, very important, change that we are seeing here. So the objective of development has now expanded to the goal of empowerment of people, building of local capacity and equity. And the objective of development communication are now expanded to include the activation of social support systems, social networks, empowerment of local narratives, and facilitation of critical awareness, and facilitation of community power. The role of the development communication worker has also changed under this approach from being just a communication expert to also be a collaborator, a facilitator, a participant, an advocate for individuals and communities, a risk taker, and even an activist on behalf of the people. So in summary, the multidisciplinary influences on dev communication, on DevCom, has been profound under these different models that I have talked about. And it has evolved from communication for development to communication in social change. Communication is not just an instrumental process to devise media materials or come up with ways of moving messages from point A to point B. But today, in our field, we also look at communication as the foundation of cultural and social processes. It is there all the time with us, among us, okay? And so that is the overarching role of communication. Now, moving on now to the, beyond 2000 to the present time. In the last 70 odd years, development has been adopted by the United Nations as and state and national governments as an important goal. However, it is I don't know what word I should use. It is disappointing to see that the spread of development has been uneven in many countries and within countries and communities. In other words, at the dawn of the present century, the 21st century, the neoliberal paradigm of development, of directed change, has influenced policies all over the world, including India, including China, okay? Which now the neoliberal paradigm today is dominated by global market-based and supply-side economic theories. And this has posed a big challenge to progressive change. In the last 45 years, the rise in income inequality and wealth have seen a significant increase globally. The relative state of countries today and the unequal stratification of communities and individuals within them on basic human indices, are, for example, life expectancy. Look at the life expectancy in some African countries and look at the life expectancy in some Southeast Asian countries, and you can see the big difference in life expectancy. Just to give you one example, okay, after 70 plus years, we still have the same kinds of problems among us. In fact, the articulation by United Nations of the Millennium Development Goals, MDG, in 2000, and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, in 2015, if you look at them, if you look at the objectives in 2015 under the Sustainable Development Goals, we still see children going to bed hungry, pregnant women not having, safe ways to give birth. Today, when we are sending people to the moon, or we sent people to the moon long time ago, we are trying to send people to Mars. We still have not solved the problem of hunger and disease, see, after 70, 75 years. So that brings us to the present moment. That brings us to this handbook, okay? And I have written about this in my other book with Dr. Leslie Steeves. What should be the priorities of development communication in the face of all these contemporary realities and challenges? How can development communication play a useful role to address and counter the inequality and injustice in development and social change today? What are the ways in which we can visualize and reconstruct or expand the mission and roles of media and communication in development and social change towards social justice goals and outcomes? These are the leading questions that are being posed by scholars, administrators, and practitioners in many fields, including media and communication. And they are pointing towards social justice. Notice the term social justice has become a very important keyword in the last 5 to 10 years. We didn't have social justice as a goal when I was a student, or even 30 years ago, but today it's very important. Okay, so the goal of social justice should serve as an anchor for development communication theory and practice. Now, just like participation earlier, I said it can be defined in many, many ways. Same is the issue with social justice. What is social justice? What does it mean? When somebody uses the word social justice, we all say, oh, yes, 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 social justice. But what do you mean by social justice? So, in the introduction, Dr. Anup Kumar was talking about the operationalization of social justice. So that, influenced myself, Arvind Singhal, and others to talk and write about this. And that brings us to this particular handbook, because the operationalization of social justice, that is the way it is defined, we feel does not reflect all the facets of social justice. So the chapters in this handbook, and there are a total of 19 chapters in this handbook, attempt to capture the different facets of social justice and the roles of social justice in the roles of media and communication in development and social change. So the chapters in this handbook deal with social mobilization, media mobilization, community mobilization, advocacy communication, participatory communication, empowerment-related communication, capacity-building communication, resistance communication, culture-centered communication, and other models for achieving social change with social justice as a very important goal. So that's a brief introduction to the chapters in this book. And since you want me to talk and then have a discussion later, I want to very briefly talk about what are some of the lessons that we have learned through all these chapters. Now, once you have read the 19 chapters in this book, how can you summarize it? Now, each chapter is written by a person who is, I would say, an expert in the use of media and communication. It covers all the continents, and it covers modernization model, it covers the participatory model, it covers the empowerment model. So each chapter has a valuable contribution to make. And obviously, I don't have the time to explain to you every chapter. But basically, I can tell you that these chapters not only follow the well-trodden path in development and communication, but they also importantly, critically examine the place, the role, and effects of media and communication in development and social change, towards with a quest towards social justice. Okay. So let me summarize for you in about 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes, and then I'll stop talking and we can start discussing what are some of the major lessons, ideas that we can take away from this volume. I would say that it presents an expanded view of development communication. Okay. And it brings together very seminal ideas and arguments about the role and place and effects of media and communication, which are active agency of stakeholders. This has been talked about a lot, and we re-emphasize that, that development outcomes, development communication outcomes should create, expand, and sustain the agency, the capacity and capability of individuals, communities, and organizations in directed change processes. We have the very famous book written by, Professor Amartya Sen, Development as Freedom. I would highly recommend it, for you to read it, written by an economist, but not using economics in the usual way. And so basically, this reinforces the view that development communication should encourage and pursue an agent-oriented view of individuals and communities engaged in directed social change programs. Okay. It must pursue social and political actions to sustain an ongoing engagement with the government and other institutions and other power holders in working towards desirable and social just futures. A lot of the chapters, I would say, this is an underlying theme. Another underlying theme, I have a total of 4 lessons that I can, take away from this book. Another one is local versus global context in development. Okay. So in this book, again, there are many contributions that, which state that the use of local community should be the locus of attention in theoretical models and should definitely be the site for political and social action. And we have many chapters that look at how important local agency is very important, okay? And of course, this brings about the question of what is local today. Local in the past, and even today, we can say, is understood as a small geographical place where people have strong interpersonal attraction and interaction. And there's an attachment to the land and its customs, okay? And today, with all the new media and the social media and so on and so forth, we can also say that local could include groups that may not be tied to a single physical space, but are associated through affinity, such as by language or religion or culture or gender or ethnicity or sexual orientation. So Professor Appadurai has talked about how in the global context, local could mean not just a local geographical place, but affinity of interests that could be spread, for example, you are in Rajasthan today, I am in Bowling Green. Okay, we are at least about 8,000 miles away and different time zone. It's evening for you. It's morning for me. I just had my cup of coffee. I've woken up now. And, but we are tied to each other through what? Through our interest in development communication. So local can mean that too, okay? So that is the second lesson. The third one, which is a bit technical, but I do want to talk about it, is it presents an enhanced role for development communication, particularly in development communication projects and programs. Okay. Earlier on, the main idea was communication needs, or what I would call as communication needs assessment, CNA, communication needs assessment, especially under the modernization model. Now, what was that? It was basically that people don't know People don't know that they have to eat a healthy diet. People don't know that they shouldn't have too many children. People don't know this, people don't know that. We have to tell them. And through communication, through radio, through other media, we have to spread the message so that people will know. And the whole thing was about moving a message from one place to another place. Okay, that's a communication needs assessment. It is still important. It's still important. And for example, in the COVID-19 situation, we need experts to tell us, what is right, what is not right. It's still there. However, in the expanded model, which some of the chapters tackle in this book, we come up with communication-based assessment, CBA. Now, communication-based assessment is quite different from communication needs assessment. Let me put together, some key ideas about what is communication-based assessment. In a development communication project, we have many agencies that are working. There is family planning, there is agriculture, there is irrigation, there are so many agencies that are working for development. Each one is within its own, what I call as a silo, or its own focus area. And this has been a problem. How do we bring them together? Because all of them are working for the same project. How do you bring them together? So in communication-based assessment, the expanded view, we are talking about development communication as a dynamic set of techniques and knowledge and tools that help to identify and meet project objectives that could also include non-communicative factors than just being concerned with communication and message-related factors. For example, there's a development project in a certain village in Rajasthan, and we are talking about bringing water. I'm just picking an example, bringing water, clean water, to the villages. And so you come up, so the waterworks department, or some department related to that, will come up with strategies of, okay, the water source for this village is over here, and this is where you need to go, and this is how you need to get your water. Very good. But when you actually go to the village, you find out that to go to that water source, you have to walk through a certain part of the village, which is segregated by gender. Men cannot go there because women are there, and or a certain caste, you cannot enter there. And therefore, your whole blueprint, your whole project of bringing water is not going to happen because of the local cultural factors. This needed to have been looked at the very beginning by bringing together anthropologists, sociologists, and others, and looking at a holistic situation. This is what, so communication-based assessment is how to bring all of the different agencies together on the message, on the strategy. Okay, it's very important, and communication here is not moving a message, but the organizing value of communication. How can we bring different agencies and different people and communities together? Okay, it goes beyond social assessment to also investigating local political, economic, environmental, technical, and other dimensions of a problem, ranking them, prioritizing their issues within a certain methodological framework so that communication can present a value-added tool to improve the design and efficacy of projects. When they all work together, the project will be more successful. Let me end this point by giving you an example. I'm sure if you may have attended a symphony, a Western symphony, or seen it on video, you will see so many musicians, people playing the violin, people playing, on the piano, the organ, and so many instruments. But there is one person there, a very important person, who's not playing any instrument. Who is he or she? The conductor of the orchestra. He or she is standing in front of all these musicians and going like this, bringing all that music, all the instruments together to produce a beautiful tune. Okay? So think of communication strategies as that, bringing all the different actors together. So that's the communication-based assessment, and that is a new idea that is point in the book. Finally, the last one that I would like to talk about, an addition in this book, is social justice. I did talk to you about social justice, and so, like Professor Amartya Sen, these chapters look at social justice as freedom from and freedom to. Two very important concepts that we introduce here: freedom from persistent discrimination and deprivation of resources for people. Okay? And inequality in the distribution of resources. Resources like food, water, medical, shelter, education, and so on. Okay? We see that we still have people today who there's inequality in these. Some people get a lot of it. Some people, communities get none of it. Okay, so freedom from persistent deprivation of important resources and inequality in the distribution of the risks and rewards pertaining to such factors. For example, at the very early stage of COVID-19 in India, we had migrant laborers who were left high and dry. The lockdown happened, all the buses, the trains and everything shut down, and people were said, stay in your homes. But migrant labor, coming from hundreds and thousands of kilometers, what were they to do? How were they supposed to go back home? They didn't have money because there was no wage labor. They didn't have food to eat. They didn't have transportation. Whereas people like you and me, we were comfortably in our homes. Okay? So see how risks of development are so unequally shared between different groups. Some groups are just left high and dry. So this is what I mean by inequality in the distribution of risks and rewards. So one aspect of social justice is freedom from those kinds of things. The other aspect of freedom that we emphasize in this book is freedom to. Here, as Professor Amartya Sen explains very nicely in his book, social justice under freedom to explores the politics of self-actualization. What do you mean by self-actualization? Is that um, basically the role of communication should explore uh, how people can live meaningful lives, satisfying lives, okay, as satisfied human beings, okay, freedom to explore different ways in which we can live and work and lead meaningful lives. This is very different from freedom to. And so here under freedom to, we are looking at politics of self-actualization, which I'll expand a little more. So in summary then, as for freedom from is conclude this section by freedom from, that social justice in development should articulate freedom from persistent deprivation of resources that everyone should have access to, such as basic education, healthcare, gainful employment opportunities, and guarantees of individual safety. Okay? All people should have access, to social safety nets, and should have access to clean and safe environment. Okay, so in this book we articulate that directed change outcomes for social justice should be operationalized as, under the freedom from model, as the establishment of structures, policies, rules, norms, etc., that value the rights of individuals and communities to access resources that will free them from underdevelopment. In other words, freedom from deprivation in all areas that is basic to our survival: food, water, shelter, medical, education, and so on. Under freedom to approach, I would summarize that social justice under the freedom to dimension must operationalize the politics of self-actualization, which is establishment of policies, structures, norms, practices that value and provide choices and opportunities for people and groups and communities to enhance their capacity and capability to live effective and meaningful and satisfying lives. This would include diversity and inclusivity of different voices, civil rights, which include free expression of speech, autonomous mass media, and transparency in all transactions that are open to public and media scrutiny. So that is freedom too. And therefore, communicative actions in development, we visualize them as very broadly from freedom from as well as freedom to, and is confined not confined just to the use of media and communication to produce, send, and receive messages, as in the transmission approach, but also to include social and political action. For a few examples, a vibrant public sphere where people can have active public discussion about issues that are important to them, a mass media system that supports equity and diversity, empowered communities, civil society groups, creation of an assertion of new actors, new places, new ideas, new practices, new identities, new voices, a democratic participation of people in the public marketplace of ideas, building social capital, and engaging in people in citizenship and civic engagement, for equity and diversity. So that's the role that we emphasize in all the chapters, for the role of development communication. With this, I am going to stop. I think I've talked too much, and I look forward to a discussion. Thank you.
Yes, now,
Yes.
yeah. Now, let us take up some questions from the participants. First question, let us take a question coming from Professor Devrat sir from Central University of Jharkhand. He raises question that how do you see the changes and modifications in various theoretical framework of DevCom in the digital age, especially when the ubiquitous personalized media like smartphones are the new tools of communication and entertainment. So, question here.
Yeah, that's a very important question, because what has happened in the new, digital age is that all our models of communication in the previous century have been turned on the head. Everything has been turned, and things are looking very, very different these days. I would say, I know this is a very profound question, and it requires a very lengthy answer, but I'll be very brief given the consideration of time here. I see the new digital age as both promising as well as challenging. Promising being today, for the first time in the human history, for the first time, we have pretty much everybody having access to communication, as a sender of communication, as a receiver of communication. Gone are the days when we have to listen to experts, doing all the strategies, talking to us. Today, anybody can participate. Today, using social media, you can be a producer of communication. Using the new digital tools, you can send out. Now, all you need is access to Zoom, or access to this present, what we are using today, Google, whatever. So it has become so easy today, relatively easy to participate as an active participant. The challenges of the past, of infrastructure and so on, has gone away. And so that is very promising. So today we have the tools for greater participation of everybody. But what are the challenges? So let me say, like, there's the one microphone, okay? In the past, this one microphone was used by one source, an expert, who used the microphone to tell all of us what to do. But today, there are 100 people in front of the microphone, because there are so many microphones. Everybody is talking, and one person is contradicting the other person. Okay? And so today we have a cacophony, chaos, too much of communication. We have some new kinds of problems today, like conspiracy theories. That is wreaking havoc on us. All kinds of messages and stories that are completely untrue, or highly exaggerated, or misrepresented, are being forwarded and being told. And this is leading to all kinds of problems in society and for governments through these conspiracy theories. There is no control anymore. In the past, there was control, like only some people could indulge. Now today, anybody can. And so this is making things very, very difficult. Freedom comes with responsibility. Okay? There is no 100% freedom. You have to temper freedom with responsibility. Unfortunately, today, people are using their communication freedom without paying any attention to the responsibility, creating havoc in society. Now, I don't have a solution to this question, nor do most people have. This is something that we need to be looking at. What are the challenges? Because today, communication infrastructure is easily available, and it makes it more challenging today to carry on.
Yeah, Professor Devrat sir, I would like to interact and compliment. Yeah. Okay. We have another question I see in the message box. A question coming from Joya Chakrabarti from Tezpur University. The question is that we tend to celebrate new age of technologies in many development programs in a country like India as a means to overcoming all access and participation inequalities. Most of the critical scholarship in this field most often remains confined within academia and rarely actualized by last mile development facilitator. How do you suggest we bridge this gap?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jaya Chakrabarti, for the question. Yes, this is another important issue. I just, in the previous response to the question, I was talking about how the communication infrastructure has changed, and today there are more opportunities for people to participate in a communication scenario. Well, maybe I have exaggerated a little bit. We still have certain bottlenecks in communication. And as you said, the last mile problem. The last mile problem is, we take, for example, just take my example in Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a rural town in Ohio, state of Ohio. My daughter lives in New York City. Okay, her internet speed is 1,000 whatever the Mbps, 1,000 Mbps. Mine here in Bowling Green is 100. Now, by the way, 100 is pretty good. With 100, we can watch full-length movies. I mean, 100 is very good. Actually, a few years ago, I had 50 Mbps. Okay, so imagine 1,000 Mbps. Okay, now the reason I have 100 Mbps, even though I'm in United States and she also is in US, is because she has optical fiber connection right up to her flat. I don't have optical fiber connection. I have optical fiber connection up to the nearest telephone pole. From there to my house is the regular copper tube. So this is a bottleneck, last mile problem. We have this last mile problem everywhere, and mostly rural areas and underserved areas have this last mile problem. Even in this age of new media, they are not well served in this. So this is a problem. And my talk today, the points I told you earlier in my talk is how the rewards of development are so unequally distributed among the populations. We still have countries. For example, in Africa, it's entire countries. In India, it may not be the whole country, but several states in India or regions within a state that have this last minute problem. This is an infrastructure problem, and governments are looking at that. We need optical fiber connections, and we also need to bring again, I don't want to repeat everything that I've said earlier, but we need to bring more people, more actors, more voices into the marketplace. And as I told you, we need freedom from inequality, freedom from, a lack of access to important resources. And so I would say that under the freedom from, you can discuss many of the issues here, and we need to work in that. We still have a lot of work to do, in spite of India being very developed, in so many areas. India recently tried to send a ship or spaceship to moon. It has the technology to do all these things, but still India has major problems, like other countries, in terms of hunger, malnutrition, certain kinds of diseases. We still had that. Okay, so this is a very important problem, and freedom from, and we need to keep our eye, because social justice means freedom from.
Yeah, thank you. Can you take another question, sir? A question coming from Annie Sadhana. Annie Sadhana, Anna University. Question is, the scholarship on DevCom sometimes tilts towards rural area. With urbanization on the increase and taking into account the new social justice model of development, what are the key points to be taken into account in communication strategies to ensure sustainable development in cities?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a good question. Thank you for that question. As you may have noticed in my talk a little earlier, I use different words to communicate the changes that are taking place. And one of the lessons that I mentioned to you from this book is local versus global. So today, in this new century, we use new terminology. We don't talk of rural areas or urban areas. We talk of local areas. Local, global, So when you start incorporating these new ways of looking at it, local, then local doesn't have to be only rural areas. Local can be any local area. It could be a local area in the city of Mumbai, in a slum. Dharavi in Mumbai is world's largest slum settlement. Okay, Dharavi can be a local area. Okay, local doesn't have to be confined to even a geographical place. Local can be a group of people who are aligned in terms of certain interest. For example, all of us today are a local group for communication and development towards social justice. Why? Because we all come together in terms of the symmetry of our interests. So when you adopt that terminology, then it takes away this urban versus rural and puts it, in a different framework. For a very long time in development, it has been articulated as national development. I take India, for example. In the earlier models, we need development for India, But then, under the new terminology, there is nothing like India, because within India, there are many Indias, right? Local areas. And so, therefore, a big change that has taken place, especially under the participatory model that I again talked to you earlier, is moving away from the idea of nation or a country framework, okay, to looking at different places. A village in Rajasthan is very different from a village in Andhra Pradesh in probably everything. If a villager from Rajasthan met a villager from Andhra Pradesh, they may not even be able to talk to each other in a common language, though they are both Indians. So, in the new language, we have moved away. So we talk of development, as I talked to you in the empowerment model, of bringing new places, new voices into the debate, into the discussion. And I think that will give you a path to discuss these kinds of issues. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we take another last question?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. A question coming from Manoj Kumar Das, Sikkim University. Do you feel we should speak of development as communication, in bracket, or maybe the other way, rather than talking of communication and development, or communication for development, C, number 4, and D like that, or such similar terms, or even development communication?
Okay. Yeah, that is a very interesting and an important question. As I was telling you, I'm trying to search for a proper. You give me 1 second here, because anyway. So what I was telling you earlier is that the two terms no longer are separate. Earlier, as I explained to you, communication was used in the modernization model to foster the objectives of development under the modernization model. It was used to spread messages and tools and techniques and so on and so forth in development. But under, in the transformation that has taken place through the participatory and empowerment models, moving from the positivistic model to the interpretive model, as I said earlier, today communication doesn't have to be only about the technique of communicating, but communication is part and parcel of everything. Communication is all around us. So we cannot separate communication from development. Okay, it is there. Okay, we are all of us. I have an interesting observation. I always mention this to my students, and I ask them a question. Just imagine a situation where you can talk to a fish, machli, fish. And let's say you can talk to a fish and you ask the fish in question, "Hello, Mr. Fish, how do you like the water?" What do you think the answer of the fish is going to be? Water? What water? What are you talking about? What water? The fish will say, "I don't know. I don't know what water is." Fish is always in the water. If you take the fish out of the water, it won't talk to you because it is dead. Same way, we are swimming in culture, in our culture. Culture is all around us. Culture and communication are all around us. That's where we all swim. We can't see it because we are living in it. Okay? And so that role of communication is exploited by the interpretive method that says that we need to have participation, collaboration, partnership, etc., with everybody, the beneficiaries of development. We need to listen to what other people are saying. We need to look around and learn from each other, and that is the only way, which brings communication as a ubiquitous, which is there all the time, everywhere. And therefore, under the interpretive method that we talked earlier, it looks at communication not distinct from development, but as development, as part of development itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Few questions came in the box. Other than this, just openly participants would like to interact with us. Just another 5 minutes, then we'll conclude, I feel. Yeah. Yeah, I think no questions coming. Okay. Yes. Anup sir. Next.
Yes,
Someone
sir.
has raised the hand.
So, uh, my name is Nitin. Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yeah, sure.
I was just listening to you, and it was very interesting, and it felt like, although the essence of your book is about the fourth estate, the majority of the book was about the other three estates. So you basically saying that communism is good and capitalism is bad. And what I want to ask you is, if you had two leaders, sir, one is communism, Jyoti Basu, who basically murdered a couple of people just because he hated refugees, and a neoliberal Lee Kuan Yew who made Singapore what it is today. Who would you choose, sir? And secondly, the last remaining social justice state in India is Kerala. Although there is no hunger or homelessness in Kerala, apparent homelessness, the major chunk of the landless people in Kerala are Dalits, sir. And there is no scope for private enterprise. So would you want a capitalist India, sir? Because I would want a capitalist India. I would want India to be rich and not just equitable, because it wouldn't be possible because of our sheer number and our demographics. So you have to choose, sir. What would you choose?
You're putting me in a very difficult situation by making me choose between this and that, and I'm not going to choose. I never said that capitalism is bad and communism is good. I cannot talk like that, because I just told you that we need an expanded view of development. We need new ideas, new voices. Like you and I and everybody else, we all have our ideas, our views. Nothing is more important than the other. What is important is the outcome of development. Okay, and so capitalism can be bad, can be good. Just for example, in India, people criticize how much there's corruption and this and that, and how socialism and is not working, and we should have look at United States and look at how rich they are and how well they're doing. But see, living here in the United States under capitalism, I find that not everything is rosy under capitalism. Okay, capitalism has both good things as well as bad things, and so I would rather not take specific things like this or that. We need to be more cosmopolitan. That is, we need to take ideas, strategies, views from a variety of disciplines, points of view, theories, and I think the focus has to be on what are the outcomes of development. Which strategy works well for this community at this time? There is no more, in the present age, there is no more one solution to all the problems. And in fact, there is no end to development. We were told when we were students, if a country does this and that, and one day you will have development. And of course, the whole view has changed. Social change is a continuous process. Social change never ends. Okay? So if you have old problems solved, they give rise to new problems. You try to solve them, they give rise to new problems. It is a never ending situation. Okay, so when I was in India, to get a telephone connection in the city of Hyderabad, I had to wait for 5 years, and maybe with some luck I would get a telephone. Today, so we all dreamt those days, oh, how beautiful it would be if all of us had telephones. Well, today in India, you have telephone in your pocket. Okay, but what are the new problems? All kinds of false news, all kinds of conspiracy theories, new problems. So the point is, whether it's capitalism or socialism, that is not the issue. The issue is outcomes of development. And we need to keep it open so that we can take more ideas. And in a participatory process, it is possible. For example, you, Mr. Nitin, have these kinds of questions, and that's very important. It's very important for me to know. It's very important for others to know. What do we do about that? And so you introduce these, like that, rather than confining ourselves to, one leader or one philosophy. That's what I would think.
Yes, Aditi. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with the theories and how the times are changing and how development communication or the researcher should, change their ideas while working on different kind of strategies to bring development communication in today's time. It was a very good session, and I think everyone must have enjoyed it. So now I would like to call Dr. Nicholas Lakra to propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Aditi, Kare, for inviting me to propose a vote of thanks and to conclude the session. I'm Dr. Nicholas Lakra. I'm a coordinator of the department. I find this session was very fruitful, and really it is a challenge to talk about development communication in present context. And our idea was to provide a platform why we are running this kind of series of book discussion. And this series is the first of that series. And we picked up a new book came in the human society, Handbook of Communication and Development. And how we see that development is very important field or discipline in human society. And I feel that what I heard from the author of the book, Professor Srinivas, and also Arvind Singhal, it is a great contribution to human society, because the communication scholars who are in the field of communication studies, we see that communication is the most important part in human society, and that's communication which builds society, and it's meant for building human society. And this book is very in-depth, very in-depth, and very in detail. Actually, sir has enlightened us about the book, but it will be more understanding will take place when we read in depth. And I feel that, and also recommend that this handbook of communication of development must be in our hand. It must be in our hand for ongoing reading and gradual reading and slow reading. Okay, and sir has this book is a very larger perspective and very comprehensive. Okay, a larger perspective in the sense how communication is enlarging in human society, and it is going. Communication goes along with the human society development, and Sir also says that at the end he comes down with the social change, and social change will go on. Same way, communication understanding what communication, science of communication also go on developing. And also, sir has underpinned this book that how communication development has gone undergoing changes. There is a historical perspective. Under that, he also explained the modernization theory, modernization model, and things like that, participation model, like that. So it is still undergoing changes. So what I underline that it is interdisciplinary, very interdisciplinary, and it stretches in every aspect of social life, socio-economic, cultural. Okay. So also, sir also has this is a new thing that sir has enlightened that how communication it should be helpful for solidarity, bringing us together, okay, and also building local community and also social justice. So, and also communication is the foundation of cultural process. This cultural perspective was came into development communication very later. And also communication is development communication should be contextualized. There was earlier understanding of development communication was from one side. Rich people or rich countries have their perspective of development communication. From poor countries' perspective was not taken into consideration, and therefore poor countries' culture was not considered as valuable. But these kind of things are coming later, culture aspect. And we underline that from our perspective, especially from our department, Culture and Media Studies of culture also very significant. And today's context, how culture is a very significant part of development communication or sustainable development. Because this development culture, this debate of culture was came very later in development communication or total understanding of development communication. So it is a great enlightenment for us. And personally, I feel it is very, very, very rich book, and we need to have this book in our hand. And I feel very grateful to Professor Srinivas and Melkote sir, and also Arvind for a great contribution. And also, sir has given enough time for discussion. And also, I find, sir, it is a very good response from all over country, different professors, research scholars, media academicians, and also media practitioners have joined this session. And also, therefore, I feel that it is a very successful discussion or session. So I'd like to thank Professor Srinivasan sir for joining us and also giving time and explaining about this book. And also, I would like to thank all the participants who have joined from different universities. Professor, including Professor Devrat sir, has joined from Central University Jharkhand, and there are so many other professors have joined from other universities, research scholars. I would like to thank everyone, and also especially I would like to thank our organizing committee, our faculty members, Professor Jagdish Jadhav sir, and also Dr. Anup sir, Dr. Neeru ma'am, and also Pranta Pratik Patnaik sir. We discussed together this kind of program or discussion series, book discussion series will launch and will continue. In the queue, there are other books also, discussion sessions are coming. So we'll send information. So we expect that you join other sessions also. So On behalf of department, I'd like to thank everyone for joining, especially Professor Srinivasan sir. Okay, so thank you once and all. Yeah. Thank you. So we can end here. So see you. It's nice to see you, sir. We read about you read book, but in person we see you. So that is a great thing. In person we see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anu.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you, Dr. Pranta. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Aditi
Yes,
Khare,
sir.
thank you so much for
Thank you, sir.
moderating an introduction till the end. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And